The Elder Scrolls series spans decades, entire continents, and thousands of years of in-game history. But hidden across all of it is a small group of characters who refuse to stay in one game. They show up again and again, sometimes unchanged, sometimes barely recognizable. Today, I'm breaking down every single recurring character in the series and what makes each one so memorable, starting with the most self-aware cat in gaming history, M'aiq the Liar. M'aiq the Liar is a Khajiit who has appeared in Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, and in every single game his job is the same: roast the developers to their faces. Here's the thing, M'aiq isn't a normal NPC. He's a wandering fourth-wall wrecking ball disguised as a cat in a robe. In Morrowind, he speaks in cryptic riddles that sound like nonsense until you realize he's commenting on missing game features. In Oblivion, he contradicts himself constantly, almost daring you to figure out what's real. But Skyrim is where he goes full stand-up comedian. He openly mocks the removal of spellcrafting, jokes about mounted combat before it was patched in, and sarcastically explains away lore inconsistencies like he's reading directly from a developer Q&A. He's literally the dev team's mouthpiece stuffed inside a Khajiit skin. Every lie he tells is actually true, or at least truer than anything the games officially confirm. His name is The Joke. M'aiq the Liar tells the truth. The games themselves lie to you, and nobody can agree on what he actually is. Is he one immortal Khajiit wandering Tamriel for centuries? Or is it a lineage of identically named sons passing down the tradition of annoying travelers? The games never answer this, on purpose. Because the moment you explain M'aiq, he stops being M'aiq, but at least M'aiq keeps a respectful distance. The next character on this list does not. The Adoring Fan. Now I need to be upfront about something. The Adoring Fan technically only appears in one mainline Elder Scrolls game, but his cultural footprint is so massive, so deeply burned into the community's collective memory that leaving him off this list would feel like a crime. So consider him the honorary entry. He earned it. After you become Grand Champion of the Arena in Oblivion, a Bosmer with the most unsettling haircut in gaming history latches onto you. He follows you everywhere, through cities, through dungeons, through the wilderness. He watches you fight, watches you sleep, watches you exist, and he never ever stops talking about how amazing you are. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. At first, it seems like a joke, a goofy little fan who worships the ground you walk on. Funny, right? But hours pass, then days, and he's still there, still following, still staring with those wide eyes and that frozen smile. His dialogue references your specific accomplishments, which means he's paying attention to everything you do. He walks into Oblivion gates with you. He follows you into caves full of necromancers. He has zero survival instinct and infinite devotion, and that combination stops being comedy real fast. The Adoring Fan is what happens when you take the power fantasy to its logical conclusion. You wanted to be the most famous person in Tamriel? Congratulations. Here's your reward. One obsessed individual who will never leave you alone. Being worshipped by one person turns out to be way worse than being anonymous. But if you think one overly attached wood elf is disturbing, wait until you meet the Daedric Prince who makes insanity his entire personality, Sheogorath. Every Daedric Prince in Elder Scrolls has a gimmick. Sheogorath's gimmick is that he's funny. He shows up in Oblivion as a shrine quest giver, has you use cheese to lure rats into a settlement as part of a fake prophecy, rewards you with the Wabbajack, and leaves you wondering if the whole thing was a joke. Then he shows up in Skyrim with a full questline inside the mind of a dead emperor, cracking one-liners about butterflies and severed heads with the exact same energy. He's the comic relief Daedric Prince, the fan favorite, the one everyone quotes. But here's the thing, he's also the Prince of Madness. Not quirky madness, not fun madness. The kind of madness that makes people claw their own eyes out because he thought it would be interesting. His realm, the Shivering Isles, is split between mania and dementia, and the dementia half is one of the most genuinely disturbing locations Bethesda has ever built. Tortured souls, paranoid citizens convinced everyone is trying to kill them, an entire civilization driven permanently insane for his entertainment. That's not a joke. That's a horror story wearing a jester's hat. And then there's the theory. In the Shivering Isles expansion for Oblivion, your character literally mantles Sheogorath. You take his place. You become the new Daedric Prince of Madness. Fast forward to Skyrim, and Sheogorath drops dialogue that sounds suspiciously like someone who remembers being mortal. He references the Oblivion Crisis. He talks about events only the hero of Kvatch would know. Bethesda never confirms it outright, but they never deny it either. The implication is wild. The Sheogorath you're talking to in Skyrim might be your old save file from Oblivion, wearing a god skin and laughing about it. That duality is exactly why he works. He's hilarious and he's horrifying, and both readings are completely valid. But if you think the Prince of Madness has a complicated relationship with the player, wait until you meet the Daedric Prince who literally took you out drinking. Sanguine. Sanguine might be the most honest Daedric Prince in the entire series, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous. In Oblivion, Sanguine's quest has you crashing a fancy dinner party hosted by the Countess of Leyawiin and casting a spell called Stark Reality that strips every single guest naked. You just walk in and ruin this woman's evening in the most humiliating way possible. In Skyrim, his quest takes a completely different approach. You get blackout drunk, wake up with zero memory of what happened, and spend the next hour cleaning up the catastrophic mess you apparently made the night before. Two totally different quests. Same energy, pure chaos designed to embarrass everyone involved. Now here's the thing that separates Sanguine from the other Daedra on this list. He doesn't want to hurt you, he doesn't want to enslave you or drive you insane or end the world. He wants to watch you embarrass yourself. He wants you crashing noble dinner parties and waking up in temples wearing stolen clothes with a wedding ring you don't remember putting on. That's his entire motivation. Pure entertainment at your expense. And that's what makes his quest so perfectly designed. Whether you're stripping nobles naked or piecing together a drunken rampage across Skyrim, every single quest captures exactly what Sanguine is. The Daedric Prince of Debauchery, excess, humiliation, and doing reckless things for no reason other than it's funny. His shrines across Tamriel attract priests described as enthusiastically committed to excess, in ways the games never quite show you directly. There's a lot left implied with Sanguine's followers, and your imagination is doing the heavy lifting on purpose. He's the Daedra, who just wants everyone to have a terrible good time. And honestly, that might be scarier than the ones trying to destroy the world. But if Sanguine's chaos is funny, wait until you meet a Daedra, who got stuck in a form that's even more ridiculous. Barbas. There is a Daedra out there, a genuinely powerful supernatural entity from the plains of Oblivion, who has spent centuries trapped in the body of a dog. Not a fearsome hellhound, not some monstrous beast. A dog. A regular barking, tail-wagging dog who happens to be able to talk. And honestly, he's one of the best characters in the entire franchise. Barbas is the eternal servant of Clavicus Vile, the Daedric Prince of Bargains and Wishes. In Oblivion, he shows up as little more than a talking dog statuette during the Clavicus Vile shrine quest. A voice trapped inside an object you carry around in your inventory. Weird, kind of funny, but barely a presence. Then Skyrim came along and gave him the spotlight he deserved. The quest A, Daedra's best friend, turns Barbas into a full-walking, barking, combat-ready companion who trots alongside you through dungeons with his tongue out. This is a creature who could theoretically rival lesser Daedra in raw power, and he's bumping into you in doorways like a golden retriever. But here's the thing, the joke works because Barbas knows exactly what he is. He's entirely too self-aware about his situation. He talks like someone who has had thousands of years to process the indignity of his existence and has come out the other side with nothing but dry sarcasm. That's not a one-note gag. That's a character with genuine pathos buried under the absurdity. Fans consistently cite him as a favorite companion in Skyrim. The comedic gap between cosmic entity and golden retriever energy never stops landing. And players figured out pretty quickly that his quest can be exploited into one of the most chaotic sequences in the entire game. His absurdity isn't just dialogue deep, it's mechanically baked into how he functions. That's what makes Barbas work across two games. He's funny, he's tragic, and he's completely aware of both. But if you think a Daedra trapped in a dog's body is unsettling, wait until you meet the Daedric Prince who collects entire minds. Hermaeus Mora. Most Daedric princes want to destroy you, corrupt you, or drive you insane. Hermaeus Mora just wants to read you, and that's somehow worse. He's the Daedric Prince of Knowledge and Fate, and for most of the Elder Scrolls series, he's barely there. You'll find his name scattered across lore books and whispered about in dark corners of Tamriel's history, but he never actually shows up. Not in Morrowind, not really in Oblivion. He's a presence, not a character. A name that scholars invoke right before they disappear forever. Then the Dragonborn DLC happens, and you finally meet him face to face, or face to tentacles. Apocrypha is his realm, and it's one of the most visually striking locations in the entire franchise. Imagine an infinite library stretching in every direction, bottomless, with no walls, no ceiling, just endless shelves of forbidden texts suspended in a void of writhing tentacles and cosmic darkness. It's pure Lovecraft, not fire and brimstone evil, but the slow, patient evil of something that has been watching and accumulating knowledge since before your civilization had a name. But here's the detail that reframes everything about him. Hermaeus Mora doesn't kill the mortals who get too close to forbidden knowledge. He collects them. Scholars who dig too deep don't die. They become part of the library, absorbed into Apocrypha forever, their minds cataloged alongside every secret they uncovered. You're not facing a monster, you're facing a curator, and his collection is alive. That's what makes him genuinely unsettling. Every other Daedric prince threatens you with destruction. Hermaeus Mora threatens you with preservation. You'll exist forever in his shelves, conscious, aware, and completely unable to leave. But if patient cosmic horror isn't your thing, the next Daedric prince on this list has zero patience, and even less subtlety. Mehrunes Dagon. Most Elder Scrolls villains want something. Power, control, dominion, worship. Mehrunes Dagon wants nothing. He wants the absence of everything. His entire existence is defined by one single drive: destroy it all, not conquer it, not reshape it, unmake it. And that makes him fundamentally different from every other antagonist in the series. He's the force behind the entire Oblivion crisis. The death of Emperor Uriel Septim, the collapse of the barriers between Tamriel and his realm, the Oblivion gates tearing open across the continent, all of it traces directly back to him. The entire main quest of Oblivion is essentially the world trying to survive one Daedric prince's temper tantrum on a cosmic scale. And when you finally confront him, it delivers. He physically manifests in the Imperial City itself, a literal god of destruction towering over the streets, while Martin Septim makes his last stand at the Temple of the One. It's one of the most visually overwhelming moments in the entire franchise. But here's the thing, for all that narrative weight, Mehrunes Dagon barely exists as a character. He's a force, a concept with a face. He doesn't monologue about his philosophy. He doesn't have complex motivations. He just destroys. And that's actually what makes him terrifying, because you can't reason with annihilation. Then Skyrim comes around, and he's drastically reduced. He shows up during the pieces of the past quest, speaking to the player directly at his shrine. But it's a far cry from the world-ending threat he posed in Oblivion. No invasion, no crisis. Just a Daedric prince handing out errands tied to Mehrunes' razor. Some fans argue the events of Oblivion genuinely weakened him. Others say Bethesda simply didn't want to repeat the Daedric invasion formula. Both explanations are probably true. His later appearances in Elder Scrolls Online haven't helped his reputation either. Fans consistently argue that every additional showing dilutes the menace. When your entire identity is world-ending destruction, showing up repeatedly and failing starts to undermine the premise. Sometimes the scariest villain is the one you only face once. But speaking of characters defined by a single world-changing moment, let's talk about the Emperor whose death started it all, Uriel Septim VII. Most recurring characters earn their status by showing up again and again. Uriel Septim VII earned his by dying. Here's the thing about the Emperor of Tamriel. He ruled for roughly 65 years. He shaped the political landscape of an entire continent, and the moment most players actually meet him, he has about 10 minutes to live. That's it. 10 minutes of screen time in Oblivion's opening sequence. And then a blade finds his chest, and he's gone. But those 10 minutes generate 100 hours of motivation. Every quest you complete, every Oblivion gate you close, every conversation about finding Martin, his lost heir, all of it traces back to watching this old man die in a dungeon while trusting you with the fate of the world. That's remarkable game design. Most RPGs spend hours building attachment to a character before killing them off for emotional weight. Oblivion does it in the tutorial. You barely know him, and yet his absence defines everything. He's a ghost haunting the entire campaign without ever literally haunting anything. Now technically, Uriel also appears in Morrowind, briefly, contestedly. Fans have argued for years about whether that appearance truly counts as a canonical in-person showing or something closer to a vision. And honestly, the argument itself tells you everything you need to know about the character's weight. People care enough about Uriel Septim to fight over a cameo, but the real legacy isn't the debate. It's what his death closed. The Septim Dynasty had defined the Empire across multiple games and multiple eras. When Uriel died and Martin sacrificed himself, that bloodline ended permanently. The Empire lost its divine mandate. And if you've ever wondered why Skyrim's civil war exists, why the Thalmor have so much power, why the entire province is fracturing, the answer is simple. Uriel Septim VII died in a sewer, and the world never recovered. Some characters matter because of what they do. Uriel matters because of what he left behind. But if you think a dead emperor casts a long shadow, wait until you meet the necromancer who tried to become a god and arguably succeeded. Mannimarco, King of Worms. Most recurring characters in Elder Scrolls show up, do their thing, and stay roughly the same between appearances. Mannimarco does something completely different. He shows up as a powerful necromancer in Daggerfall, disappears for a while, and then comes back in Oblivion as a literal god, not metaphorically, not really powerful mage that people worship, an actual deity. And that transformation is what makes him one of the most fascinating villains in the entire franchise. Here's the thing. During the events of Daggerfall, the warp in the West causes multiple contradictory endings to happen simultaneously, and one of those outcomes is Mannimarco achieving genuine divine ascension. He breaks through the barrier between mortal and divine, something almost no character in Elder Scrolls history has ever pulled off. The Necromancer's moon-orbiting Arche isn't some power source he tapped into. It is him, his divine body, hanging in the sky as a direct challenge to the god of death himself. By the time you encounter him in Oblivion leading the Order of the Black Worm, you're dealing with something bizarre. A mortal version of Mannimarco still exists on the ground while his god form circles overhead. One was a man pushing the limits of necromancy. The other had already shattered those limits entirely. But what elevates him above your standard power-hungry villain is his philosophy. Mannimarco doesn't want to rule Tamriel. He doesn't want an army of undead slaves. He wants to break the chains of mortality itself. He sees death as a limitation, not a natural order, and necromancy as the tool to transcend it. That's not evil for evil's sake. That's a coherent worldview taken to its absolute extreme. Now, whether his godhood is genuinely canonical or a self-constructed delusion is still debated. Both readings are supported by the text. Some players see it as confirmed divine ascension. Others see a delusional lich who convinced himself he achieved something he didn't. The fact that neither interpretation has been officially shut down is either brilliant deliberate ambiguity or a lore gap nobody at Bethesda wants to touch. And then there's the biggest question of all. Mannimarco is completely absent from Skyrim. Zero presence. If a mortal achieves godhood in Tamriel, where does he go? What does he do? Fans have been asking that question for nearly 2 decades, and nobody has an answer. But if you think ascending to godhood is impressive, wait until you meet someone who's been alive for over 4,000 years and couldn't care less about any of it. Divaith Fi are 4,000 years old. Let that number actually settle in your brain for a second. Divaith Fir was already ancient before the Tribunal became gods. He was walking Tamriel before most of the political structures that define the continent even existed. Empires rose. Empires collapsed. Entire civilizations were born and extinguished. And this one Dunmer wizard watched all of it happen from the same tower. When you meet him in Morrowind, he's living in Tel Fir, a massive Telvanni mushroom tower, and he treats you like a mildly interesting insect. Not with hostility, just with the detached amusement of someone who has seen literally everything. He's one of the most powerful mages alive, sustained by magical longevity enchantments that have kept him breathing for 4 millennia. Most characters in Elder Scrolls measure their lives in decades. Divaith Fire measures his in eras. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. His daughters. Divaith created them, magically. They're clones, women he brought into existence for companionship, and the games never once address whether this is brilliant or monstrous. Divaith himself couldn't care less about the moral question. He made them because he wanted to, and that was enough for him. The fandom has debated this for over 20 years, and there's no clean answer. The ambiguity is the point. He's a 4,000-year-old wizard operating on a moral framework that stopped resembling anything human centuries ago, and the franchise clearly isn't done with him. Elder Scrolls Online brought him back in a major way, making him a prominent figure in both the Morrowind chapter and the Clockwork City storyline. You interact with him directly, work alongside him, and get a front row seat to just how terrifyingly competent this wizard actually is across multiple eras. He's not some dusty lore footnote. He keeps showing up because the world literally cannot move past him. He won't let it. But honestly, that fits him perfectly. There's something quietly devastating about a character who survived everything Tamriel could throw at him and just keeps going. He didn't die in some epic battle. He didn't sacrifice himself to save the world. He just persists. Era after era, crisis after crisis, still standing in that tower while civilizations crumble around him. And that's exactly what makes him the most compelling recurring figure in this entire franchise. Not spectacle, not power, just the melancholy of a being who has outlived his own relevance 100 times over, and still refuses to stop watching the centuries blur together. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every interesting NPC in World of Warcraft, click the video on the screen now.